Typical content. Included within the movie category is a synopsis about the film. It is only 6 sentences long, so only some of the plot is given away, not any crucial details. This makes the synopsis more intriguing for the audience in a way that there is very little detail. For example, it mentions Ethan Hawke discovering a box of mysterious, disturbing home movies that plunge his family into a nightmarish experience of supernatural horror. And that is all that's mentioned in relation to the plot. It does not specify exactly what becomes of the family after Hawke discovers the home movies. Therefore, the viewer has to go and see the film to find out. Also in the synopsis, it mentions that some of the Sinister crew members include the producer of Paranormal Activity and the writer and the director of The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which will intrigue the audience because Paranormal Activity and The Exorcism of Emily Rose were both global phenomenons and suggested to the audience that if they like either of these films, the chances are they're going to like Sinister. Other headings in this category include production notes, which have not been uploaded to the site yet, cast and filmmakers, all of which are yet to be added by the website creators. This provides the audience with a little more information about the making of the film itself as opposed to just having the film plot. How media language communicates genre, themes, characterization, and film plot. The font style of the text, headings, and subheadings all appear as though they've been written in child's handwriting, which gives the impression that the horror included within the movie will perhaps involve the possession of children, or that the evil is the children. It also puts a rather horrific twist on the concept of children in a way that they are represented as being young, sweet, and innocent, but when children are used in horror film, suddenly everything childlike and innocent becomes twisted and evil. The colours used on the Sinister website are red, black, and white, which tends to be the typical colour theme for the horror genre because they all represent specific elements, nearly always included in horror films. Red, for example, is always associated with horror because it represents blood, evil, and violence, all of which are expected in a horror film. Black is also a very typical colour used within the horror genre in a way that it represents something very sinister and dark. Also, a majority of horror films typically include scenes in the dark to create more tense, suspenseful and frightening scenes. The colour white is also part of the house style, maintaining the horror genre, and also represents the children in a way that the colour white symbolises purity and innocence, which is usually how the children are represented as well as being vulnerable and powerless. It also creates quite a strong contrast against the sinister black and the dark red. The way in which this sketchy child-written text appears in the colour white links the two together to clearly indicate that their usually sweet nature and innocence is going to take a dark, terrifying turn. The images themselves maintain the horror in a way that the puzzled and fearful facial expressions of the characters, the very low-key lighting, and the close-up shots of the blood-splattered walls are very typical of the horror genre, and will associate this sort of lighting conditions, the splattered blood, and the characters looking afraid and in pain with horror. It's blatantly obvious from looking at the imagery that the films of the horror genre, for example, the lighting in all of the shots that you can see on the homepage, is very low-key, which is very typical of the horror genre. The characters' facial expressions, for example Ethan Hawke, in the imagery also resemble fear and paranoia, which is also very generic of the horror film genre. The blood splattered on the walls, which you can see here, indicates that the film does contain some brutal and most likely gory violence. It also indicates that there will be numerous murders or deaths throughout the film, which is a very common syntactic feature of the horror genre. There is also an image of one of the characters lying on the floor with tape over their mouth, which you can see here, looking beaten and weak, and they're presumably tied up, which represents the violence in the horror film and suggests that the characters are going to be tortured in some brutal way. It also indicates the denial of escape from the house, and that they are going to become trapped by the sinister evil.